The Banking Scene Director's Cut goes behind the scenes, sharing stories and insights to help you build the bank of tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. We are here for quite an exceptional episode today. And it will be about a book that I've been asked to review a few months ago. Pretty exceptional book. And it's by my fintech hero, Chris Skinner, who asked me to have a look at his book and give me his comments. And I really loved the book. Of course, I got a draft, so there were some grammatical mistakes where at a certain moment he said, yeah, you can stop sharing those because it has been reviewed by others as well. All those things have been corrected. So I kept reading it and I loved the draft. It's completely different from anything he had written in a book form before. The book's called Diary of a Ponzi Scheme, a story based upon token money, token love, and token lies. He calls it Pulp Finction. And in this podcast, we will discuss what this book is about, how it's written, and what Chris's biggest fans, those in this podcast, think of his new life as an author. Our guests today are Julia Streets, today a business coach, also advisor, former comedian, and always up for a great conversation on anything related to banking and finance. Wasim Mushtaq. He is, I think he's been asked by Chris because every time we invite him for FinTech Uncut, even when Chris wasn't in the show, those episodes got the highest amount of viewers. So I assume that this way Chris is trying to lift the number of viewers again, this time in promotion of his book. And then last but not least, a frequent, usual suspect, Andrew Voscher, who doesn't need much introduction. So we are here because Chris suggested setting up this podcast to discuss, and I quote the email invitation, how real the book is. I have my own opinions about it, and I may share them afterwards. But yeah, it's a special book, and I'm not sure even whether how real it is the right question. After all, what initially made me hesitate to read the book was a comment by someone in this call saying it was more of a fashion book, a book promoting London's hospitality more than anything else. Without sharing much of the story just yet, I think those details were part of the magic from what I read. Not because they were details, but because they show the importance of an inner circle of money in building a Ponzi scheme. Andrew, why did it, and I may be using the wrong word, why didn't it bother you in the beginning that Chris was talking fashion and drinks all the time?
Okay, so I just want to clear my name here. When you asked me the question, your question was, do you like the book? And I was only 30% of the way in, according to my Kindle at the time. And I said, my answer was, I do, but I'm not sure whether or not you will get it. And the reason why I said that is there is a lot of British humor, which is one of the things that I love Chris for, because we have good banter there. There's a lot of British humor and particularly play on words, the people's names that were in there. You know, we've got Tricky Dicky in there, and we've got a couple of lords, and we've got some people that you can instantly...
Some neobanks.
You can figure out who they're referring to in real life. But I wasn't sure how that would translate to an international audience. So that's why I had made the comment. The details didn't bother me, but we'll get onto a bit more of the details later. And I am going to be rereading the book. And I'm going to reread the book and make a list of every single one of the places that the main character ate or drank in. Because I think in the entire book, there were only 2 that I'd ever been to.
Andrew, please make the list before we have our banking scene offside again.
Yeah, I'm not sure Andrew can afford these places, though.
And I'll be paying.
and Rick, to be fair, both of us are going to have to up our fashion game if we're going to go to any of these places, according to that book. And
Mm.
I'll touch on the fashion bit later. But
Wasim, Did you know that Chris is such a diva that he knows all these details? And would you agree that actually helps in building this specific story?
Well, yes, I think Chris is a diva. Probably one of the biggest financial services. So I've always known that to be a fact. I didn't know he was such a fashion expert. Maybe back in the day, when he was maybe a bit younger, he used to wear all those clothes, but I've not seen evidence of that. However, he is quite flashy with his glasses and his shiny shoes and sometimes his funky jacket. So yeah, I think the whole knowledge on the cocktails, the restaurants that Andrew's mentioned, the hospitality. I think there's like another character in this book that we already talked about, which is the City of London. And it's quite an interesting kind of backdrop. It reminds me of The Bear, where it's like another character in the book is Chicago, in terms of, like an interesting kind of intertwined. But I think all of it is actually part of, I would say, selling the environment. If you look at the character, I don't want to ruin the book for anyone who wants to watch it. The character, Clint, is really selling investors more of the surroundings and the audience and all these little things. And it's more, it's interesting to play on social proof, I would say. So I think it's definitely helped the book. It's definitely bring it a bit to life. And it was interesting. I was always thinking, oh, when's the next breakfast going to be? When's the next drink going to be? Where is it going to be? I knew some of these places. I didn't know all of them. So I actually found it very interesting.
And to be fair,
sorry, when you go.
It's not. That's a brilliant point that you bring up there in terms of the character of the City of London, because it's not just. I mean, I am taking the mickey when I'm saying, the eating and the drinking, but Chris wove in a lot of historical points as well. Just those little bites to add a bit more color and depth, a bit of a.
I think that's also where you recognize that it's still a Chris book, because Chris loves history. He loves playing with these things, etc. If you're a regular reader of his blogs, you see that a lot. And I think that's where I was happy to, read a proper Chris story, but in a completely different style. Now, Chris, maybe now is the right time to share a bit of the story, but also what made you write this book and why in this specific style? Because it's a complete break with what you did so far.
Yeah, I mean, long story short, I woke up in January and just thought, I've got a lot of wealthy friends, and some of them are invested in things that I recommended. And I realized that I could quite easily just scam them because they trust me. And so that was kind of the inspiration for the book. And then I thought, an awful lot of business books are boring. So I'm going to write a fictional book, a story. And the main theme of the book is the love affair between Clint and Becca, which develops through the story. I won't say much more because, as Wasim said, I don't want to give too much away. But in the process of developing the love story, I try and explain a lot of complex things around, in this theme, stable coins and CBDCs and crypto and tokenized deposits. So to me, it's a introduction to finance for people who don't understand money in a nice way, rather than the boring way. And in fact, it's the first of 7 books, which may surprise you. I've already written
7 already.
Yeah, I've already.
Do you have more books?
Well, I've already written the second, which is about a futures options trader in the city who falls in love. He deals in fossil fuels, and he falls in love with someone who's in Extinction Rebellion, and that changes his world. So, I see you got that one, Andrew. So in all of them, it's a fictional story. It's not always love stories. Some of it is just things that are going on in the world. But I try and interweave in those what I know about London and fashion and the restaurants and things that I go to in the city. And bearing in mind that you say I'm not fashionable, Wasim, I do sometimes wear a suit.
But isn't he fashionable? I just said that. I think the way Clint dresses maybe was a younger version of yourself, perhaps. I did want to say two things. I don't read a lot of fiction at all. I read more like boring kind of business books. And I felt like I actually read a fictional book more than I feel like I could give this to my wife and she would read it and enjoy it. She's one of those avid readers that reads a book a week.
It's pretty light
You
reading
know,
as well. I could even read it while my kids were around, and that's impossible with a business book.
Well, I was just going to just jump in there because I think there are sort of two or three things for me. One is I've been traveling for the last five weeks, and it has been a joy to be able to pick up a book that I can turn the pages very happily with and pop my way through it. So it's definitely a page turner. But also to read something that is just so different. And that whole point about actually bringing the essence of a story, but also the fundamental principles of, yes, learning about CBDCs, tokenization, real world assets, even touches on quantum, programmable money. So anybody wants to learn about this, whether you're a student, whether you're in your career, whether you're an investor, exiting entrepreneur, but also it brings some really, really cool questions, which come to mind right now about how do you gain trust and influence trust? And how do you gain critical mass in order to drive pace and volume and scale? Now, without getting into the details at all about how this is revealed in the book, these are some really fundamental questions which people are thinking about right now. And it challenges our thinking. I was going through the book going, do you know, I quite like him. God, I hate him. I like him. No, I don't like him. Oh, what a fool. And I'm looking at all these other characters going, how can you? But I can see how you can. And it really sort of challenged me to think about actually when we go to our circles of trust is have you got those dissenting voices that will disagree with you? Because as you go through this whole journey in the book, you begin to go, are they all just jumping on a bandwagon and believing because in certain environments and certain positions of power, you create these circles of trust and go, what are you invested in? What are you interested in? Are you in? Oh, what are you doing? Oh, I should get in there too. So FOMO plays. But also, actually, who in my circle is going, don't do that. That would be a very foolish thing to do. And I love that because it challenged it all the way through with every page. So, and also everything we've talked about in terms of the essence of where he is, what he's eating, what he's drinking, what he's wearing, who he's hanging out with, which made it really believable as well.
Yeah, and I also think this, because these days you see a lot of business people starting to write novels and thrillers about the future and with things with AI, etc. It's all taken very seriously. And I think with this book, it's a typical Chris book. He doesn't take himself too seriously, and that makes it very fun to read, but has all the fundaments required to make it something much more compelling than just another pulp fiction, which is why I call it pulp fiction. It is kind of educative, and it has a lot of the elements that he writes about in a serious manner day to day.
There was a lot there. As Julia said, if you're a student or somebody who's involved in financial services, even to us who are completely immersed in there were a couple of things. So the way that Chris builds the knowledge around the tokenization and how funds like this work, it's incremental. It doesn't feel like a business lecture. Right. However, by the end of the book, you actually know a hell of a lot about tokenization. And, it's just, there's a couple of reinforced, the main characters at a board meeting and somebody asks a question and he groans and he's like, oh, not this again, and he goes over it. But then he gives you a little bit more than he gave you last time. So you start reading and you start reading fast and you go, yeah, you said this. Oh, you didn't say this last time. And you learn a little bit more. So by the end of it, even though we're fully immersed
I would say
in it,
pretty sharp for an old man.
Yeah, not bad.
Who are you calling an old man?
With all of this,
Chris, do you get a lot of this abuse? Is this common practice?
I was going to say,
I could chime in too.
I'm an old man at young at heart, and I guess the critical point is that I wanted to explain a lot of complexity of finance in a fun way, so that as you absorb it, you don't realize that you're learning, but you are learning an awful lot. And it's the same with the next book, The Bank Who Sold the World, which is this fossil fuels trader who falls in love with an Extinction Rebellion activist. And the whole point of that one is to explain options and futures and structured finance trading in airlines and fossil fuels, but in a way which is not boring. And I think this is a critical point. And in fact, the reason why I call it Pulp Finction, Fun Fact, Finance and Fiction, was inspired by Rick, because you called my book Pulp Fiction, and I thought, no, it's Pulp Fiction. So pulpfiction.com is a new website, which is the platform for the 7 books that are coming out.
I missed that one already.
And this is
Smart.
the first of them. The Bank Who Sold the World will
Chris,
come out.
you succeeded.
What?
You succeeded 100% in the educational part of that without making it feel like it. That was, hands down, that was.
But can I just throw a counter to that? Because actually, what was really interesting is I got to the end of the book, and we've talked about there are some references to this character Clint and what he wears and his observation of what other people wear. And what I was really amused by was I got to the end of the book, and I was obviously reflecting on it in anticipation for today, and I was like, God, there was. Chris knows an extraordinary amount about sort of high fashion, couture fashion. Or does he? Because actually, I was thinking he could have said anything. He could have actually, I mean, it may surprise people to know that I don't wear Louis Vuitton and Chanel every single day. But it's like, there are probably little references that go, I don't know. But actually, I'm so believing in the way that it's written, which then added another layer of going, am I just blindly trusting that actually this is exactly the right terminology for certain fashion?
And also, it doesn't matter. It isn't a fashion book.
But if it's a question about trust, it's a question about trust is like, actually, have I been, forgive the golden thread pun, but have I been kind of, by understanding a world that I don't understand, by going, it's interesting, I have blindly trusted that as I've been reading the book.
I must admit, the fashion thing came through because
I wanted to say that
if you're selling a Ponzi scheme, you recognize what other people look like immediately, and you recognize what they're wearing and their net worth. And that was the point of the fashion angle. Sorry, Wasim, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, I was just saying that it really got me thinking about, when you're looking at investments, you're looking at Crowdcube, or, someone's kind of pitching to you, or you're speaking to VCs and private equity and what's on the pitch deck. At the end of the day, they're selling a story. They're selling an opportunity. They're selling, a way to, capture part of that, Tom or Tam, no one really gets into the nitty gritty of any really fintech, because you don't really talk about the IP and the nuances. And I heard myself listening to Clint answering all the questions, with basically dropping all the buzzwords and creating a narrative that, it probably makes sense, that makes sense. Yeah, that I think, like when one of the meetings, because he's able to explain distribution ledger technology, he was able to get that a $250 million investment, after a meeting in a cocktail bar. And it got me thinking about, and Rick, you'll probably kind of agree with this, because I'm a fan of Aristotle's laws of persuasion. Your book, Ethos, mentioned that. And it really talked to me about social proof and what we feel is credible, and who do we trust. And if you look the part, usually you are the part. If you can speak the part, if you are the part. And then, one of the characters talked to me about, what are you? Who are you? No, don't tell me what you've done. What do you do? And it just got me kind of self-reflecting on whenever I've been, I would say, scammed, or whenever I've fallen into an investment that I realized, this wasn't good. What made me make that decision? Was it other people I knew were doing it, or was it because, I felt it passed enough of the ticks, or was it because
that's also the reason why I've been thinking of a couple of friends who have been scammed, who are not in the business, to hand them this book as well, because it can also be read by someone not working in fintech, not working in finance.
And
but there is another element to this, which is there's another element to it, which is disposable income, which is to us, like, we go, well, why do we trust so blindly and get persuaded? Due diligence, and also the documentation, actually just going through the contract. But for some people, but these aren't sums. They are sums that would probably sting us. But actually, when you talk about some of the people and some of their wealth, it could just be small change. relatively small change. So actually, what is the attitude towards trust, risk, and also keeping up and keeping company with people you want to keep company with? So what's fascinating to me is when you think about because there are threads of other characters, like members of the royal family, celebrities, as well as other entrepreneurs, and some people, and charity, and some people are almost kind of using this as a lever to get into certain circles, and maybe that matters more to them than the check at stake, if you like, the investment at stake.
But also in a situation where you are being scammed amounts of money, what's the value of a contract if the counterparty cannot be trusted?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an interesting point when people are, sorry, just one point. It's interesting when people are negotiating a percentage of the management fee or percentage of the profit, when at the end of the day, it's zero anyway. But people get comfortable. And there was a line in the book that actually got me thinking. And, I'm not going to say what page it was, but I did kind of make a note of it. But basically, when money was paid to a specific individual, you mentioned he doesn't know, but now I own him. And that was really interesting because you ended up getting people working for you in this social construct because they're all incentivized by getting a cut of this illusion of money, when really, and because of that, no one's really stopped doing any due diligence on it. And I felt that was really interesting as well, and people's kind of motivations.
I meant to ask you, because
You have something to add.
every character is based on someone I know. So how many of them did you recognize?
Clint.
Well, I used to have a friend called Clint, and I sent an invitation out to a party, and unfortunately I spelled it all in capitals, and I joined the L and the I by accident, and so he's a rotten Clint. I'm not going to swear on this podcast.
Caught the reference very early on that one.
Yes, and that one might have gone over Rick's head.
Well, that's the interesting thing. Actually, I think,
for example, Dirk Boronsky. Did you recognise who Dirk Boronsky is?
Yes.
It
might be leading a revolution of a bank.
That's right.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious if you know the industry.
Tom as well.
Dick Bronson, so pretty obvious.
Did you say that all the characters are fictional?
Yeah,
they are totally fictional.
A question: did anyone spot some Easter eggs?
Sorry, Easter eggs?
Yes.
Did anyone spot some Easter eggs?
Can I actually read out the Easter egg? Can I read a
for the benefit of all, what do we mean when we talk about Easter eggs? It might be helpful just to explain.
So going way back, and Chris, you probably know the origins better than me, but I know Easter eggs from the days of coding, where coders back in the 80s used to drop bits of code that could only be unlocked through a certain sequence of keys or something like that. They might embed a game. For example, there was an entire game of Doom embedded in early Microsoft Excel and things like that. So
I remember in one of the banks I worked for, they programmed Snake in the app.
Yeah. And then, in movies, you'd refer to the Easter eggs as just little hidden clues here and there that will appeal or be recognized by a small audience. Now, four of us here have been involved in our previous podcast, FinTech Uncut, that we were telling you about earlier, Julia.
Yeah.
And Wasim, was that the Easter egg that you were referring to, or was there another one? Because I've copy pasted just that one paragraph that I just want to read out. Was that the one that you were referring to?
Well, you're talking about a T-shirt that has the two words on it.
So just for the benefit, I am going to read just a little bit, right? And it was about a meeting that the main character had. I'm just going to read it there. And he's meeting this bloke called Tim, right? So Tim founded Monkey, a British challenger bank 10 years ago. Its name is a play on the idea that in Cockney rhyming slang, a monkey is a £500, although its origins go way back to when British soldiers in India saw a monkey on the 500 rupee banknotes and adapted it for British currency when they returned. Tim is also wearing jeans and an orange t-shirt, which matches his hair. In psychedelic colors, the front of his t-shirt says F-U. A bit different, I think, but then I look closer and there are smaller letters underneath that read FinTech University. Ah, that makes sense. Our logo for our FinTech Uncut podcast was a massive F and a U. So when I read that, I went, yes, Easter egg. Were there any more that you had found, Wasim?
Well, yes, I saw a few, but I was also like wondering if April the 31st was an Easter egg, and because there is no such day. And then on that, are we supposed to read the story with that or omit it, or is there something hidden in there more that is interesting? And then I think I found the whole thing on the Lord was told to rest. Is that because he feels he is the Lord, or is it because he's a religious person or something else? So I just felt there was some interesting narrative that if you wanted to delve in and create your own story subplot, you could. I thought it was just quite interesting. That's all.
And the other aim of it was, and I think, Julia, you highlighted this, it's something you can pick up and put down very easily because it's a diary. So you don't have to read the whole thing in chapters. It's just like every day there's something happening, and the idea of that was, I think it's like Bridget Jones' diary. It's more addictive.
I think,
And
Chris,
there's a sense of pace as well. Just how quickly this can take. I mean, just it's a day's work. It's a few phone calls. It's a few lunches and brunches, and it's drinks and deals that get done. And actually, how much you can drive at some pace in a really short. But also how the world can change so quickly.
It's mad.
it's a
isn't
lot
it?
like Bridget Jones, but I think certain details may not be in Bridget Jones' diary, and they were quite obviously and maybe too much in yours. Like, for example, do any of you know how many times Clint actually starts his day with the 3 S's?
Should we tell the audience
Is that a thing in the
what
UK?
those are?
Do you want to explain what the 3 S's are for the benefit of the audience?
It was shit, shower, and
Shave.
shave.
Shave, shower, and shit.
Shave, shower, and shit.
Does the order matter?
Yeah.
Does the order matter? I mean, gents, does the order matter? I don't know. I'm curious.
Isn't that your routine?
Where did that came from?
That's what we all do, isn't it? Well, not the
Well,
ladies
I don't need to
necessarily
shave
shaving,
daily
but
for the first start, but
And
Yeah,
Wasim doesn't shave either. I mean,
I did actually. I shaved my head this morning just to be presentable.
yeah, you trim your beard.
And I trimmed my beard.
no, Rick had asked, is that a thing in the UK? Well, I wouldn't be able to answer because I'm not originally from the UK, although I was
you
familiar
live
with
in the UK long enough to know their habits, my friend.
But doesn't everyone do the 3 S's, particularly men?
It's taken the strangest turn. I was not expecting this podcast, but let's go there. Let's do it. Let's do it. Tell us, does the bodily function routine change around the world? I think that's the next topic for the next podcast. I am so intrigued.
All right, let's not delve too deep into that.
Let's move on. Swiftly.
Maybe a question to all but Chris. Am I the only one, except for the fashion, that for some reason had to think of the author Chris a lot of times when he read about the main character Clint Davidson?
except for the 5K runs.
Except, yeah, maybe, except for the 5K runs.
Otherwise, the rest of it to me was Chris. I was reading it as Chris.
The more I read it, the more I felt it was Chris or an earlier version of him, or maybe a persona that Chris may have had of himself, because
Yeah, his
everyone
evil
has
twin.
one idea of
His
themselves.
evil twin, not Chris exactly, but his evil twin.
Maybe.
A bit like with
but
the
I think,
Simpsons. You had Bart Simpson, and then upstairs you had the evil twin of Bart Simpson.
But I always think the sign of good writing is when actually the central character isn't the author.
Yeah.
And so what I like the way Wasim kind of reflects that is like kind of so when you're writing any kind of character work or you're doing any kind of character, you mentioned before I used to be a stand-up comedian, so when you're doing sketches, is you actually can't bring too much of yourself. You have to embody someone else. So it's interesting. So I could see a persona of Chris wind back
Yeah.
a while ago, but I don't think that's the very essence of who Chris is. But Chris has met enough Clints in his life
Awesome.
to be able to go, that's a little bit I'm just going to capture there. That's a bit I'm going to capture there. And then basically to center down into a genuine character that sustains the book. So there was no deviation. But what there was enough to kind of challenge thinking about what we talk about, the relationship with somebody called Becker, is actually he could have done certain things but actually as he was kind of growing and changing, is he did things which I'm like, I wouldn't expect him to do that. But I understand why he would, because actually characters have got text and subtext, and they've got layers, and they're they're complex individuals who are also going on a journey, and great characters go on a bit of a journey too.
Yeah.
So actually, yeah, it was I wouldn't say it was exactly Chris, but I would say that there was
No,
some
absolutely not. I had to think
some-
of Chris when I read about him, when I read about his
Yeah.
habits, his way of thinking, etc. Every once in a while. But yeah, Julia, in the
I think
initial
there's an alter
invitation.
ego.
Oh,
I just want to say, I think there's an alter ego element there, or a distorted alter ego element where, if you think about the fintech and the knowledge and the network, and you think about, when, we've all been in the financial services for quite some time. There are characters like Clint and others that are mentioned in this book,
Yeah.
everywhere. And
Mhm.
we've all experienced it in different shapes and forms. And we've all seen people, I would say, a lot less smarter than us do a lot more, and vice versa. And I'm really intrigued to understand, like, not a prequel, but what happened to Clint on the 31st of December, the day before this all kicks off.
Right.
What implosion or midlife crisis or something happened where he said, F it, I'm going to run this Ponzi,
Scheme.
and I'd love to understand, Chris, to answer that question or
We'll
to delve
probably need
into
a
it a little
10th
bit.
book.
That's going to be in a prequel.
Is it Chris, prequel?
Desperation, mate. Desperation. He wakes up and he's broke and needs money. So con all your friends.
Two more
Yeah, there
questions
could be a
left.
prequel there.
First one's for Julia. Julia, in the initial invitation in the email to join us for the podcast, Chris introduced it as the idea to review how likely it is that the book is real. In that context, according to you, was it important to add a storyline linked to the royal family? Did it make the story more real according to you?
That's a really interesting question. I kind of did the royal family. I mean, I kind of refer back to some earlier remarks I made about it's about power and celebrity, but also third-party endorsement. How do you gain trust, and how do you gain critical mass?
Yeah.
And so by having some personality of influence, that really matters. We talk about influencers today in everything that we do with our marketing.
Yeah.
It's a very similar thing in those circles that are going to unlock very big checks that are going to make a difference, which, by the way, surprised Clint along the way as well. I think he was just thinking, I'm just going to go to a small group of my mates and get them to write relatively small checks. Disposable income is an interesting concept. But actually it took hold as soon as somebody said, well, actually, I work in the palace.
Yeah.
But also what was fascinating to me was the relationship between the palace and him, and also palace and charity. So what's fascinating, I won't go into too much. I've worked in some proximity on occasion with the household, the firm, as they say. And what's fascinating is this interchange with charity and realizing that actually as the prince could make some impact by keeping company with the entrepreneurs who have the big checks that could also influence his cause.
Yeah.
So when you begin to look at the dynamics of power and who's not playing, but who's influencing whom, that becomes a lot more complex. And all Clint has done is just got to open up an opportunity that has then created new community.
Yeah.
It's not just that. It's also actors, musicians, comedians, sports personalities. It's a whole new world.
And I guess knowing those people is one thing, but the additional layer of knowing the lives of the people, knowing the insights, makes him much more credible.
Well, having somebody who's going to recommend you in, that's how he got in, because somebody said, "Oh, actually, I think this could connect very well with with the ambition and the intention and the curiosity.
Yeah, but
And I
then he
think
got
that's-
into all the intrigue, and the intrigue made it a risk, but I think also tremendous opportunity growing the business, because suddenly he knew what happened in that inner circle. He didn't just know people in the inner circle, but he knew what was going on.
to a degree, to an extent, all I
Yeah.
would say is what's fascinating for me, just as kind of putting my comedy hat on for a second, it seems to me is watching people who are not in the inner circle, just trying to be in the inner circle,
Yeah.
and anybody who pretends that they are in the inner circle and isn't is a little disillusioned. And watching how hard people attempt to be in changes some behavior. So he may well have thought that he had some influence, but in truth, actually, I don't think he did. He was just lucky that somebody opened a door that then opened an opportunity, which opened some checks and opened some relationships. But he wasn't in control there.
Isn't
Great.
that such an interesting point, sorry to interrupt, that the inner circle is always the inner circle. No one and they perceive outsiders as, outsiders, and they always will be. It's that interesting dynamic about old money and new money, entrepreneurial money coming in. I thought the
Well,
whole
I think also
charity lunch.
also with new money, you can have inner circles. Inner circles about who you know and who wants to stay close to each other to be felt as a
Trust and
separate kind
challenge.
of family. Whether it's old money or new money, in the case of the royal family, that's clearly old money. But the new, like fintech, had its own inner circle as well.
Hmm.
Absolutely. There's definitely an inner circle, in the
Yeah.
fintech industry or whatever you want to call it, where, people know each other. And I found the whole royal charter thing, the crest, very interesting as like a substitute for due diligence.
Yeah.
And then,
Hmm.
I mean, in some ways that charity lunch, I don't want to ruin it or anything, but the whole thing could have imploded, but in some way it validated everything because no one was actually doing due diligence, and they were just,
Hmm.
because everybody was in the room and it was based on a charity or whatever, it validated it in some weird way. I just thought the whole thing was very interesting.
And doesn't that happen at every level? Like we literally go onto social media, we see an influencer going, "This is amazing," and we hand over our cash. We just go,
Yeah.
"Well, it must be,"
Yeah.
and it
Well-
must be. If some celebrity has endorsed their face cream, I'm going to look younger in 20 years. Of course I am. Of course I am. Like why? And people are making these decisions based upon the influence of somebody going, "Yeah, no, I think this is great." And that's basically all they were doing, was going, "I
Yeah.
think this is great," but I think there is also opportunity to be unlocked. What I also liked was actually the natural curiosity to understand and to learn and to engage with the current world, rather than just
and
be,
anticipate.
"We've got to give it to my family office and they will take care of it and they'll put it in the bank and I don't know what they do, but they just do that thing." It was a real curiosity to learn.
Anything you like to add to this, Chris?
I mean, from my
Yeah.
side, it's interesting how the story built, because I didn't have a prescription up front. I just had this idea that I've got a lot of wealthy friends, I could scam them in real life. And I wouldn't do that because it's it's not a good thing to do. But the way the story unfolds is that, and I think Julia and Razim have picked up on this quite well, is the more you have endorsement from big name celebrities and royalty and the fintech world and others, the more that people believe they can trust you. And some of that is also based on a personal thing that happened to me, which is I invested in a scheme and lost all my money because it's endorsed by celebrities. So it's kind of really all about trust and the whole idea of the world becoming digital, tokenized, crypto, stable coins, everything that's happening. And do you really want to be in that world? Yeah, I can promise you can make $1 million, but actually the real truth is I will make $1 million.
Yeah. And it's pretty universal after all. Isn't that also the reason why you asked us to make a podcast to promote your book?
Yeah, to make me $1 million. Thank you.
Well, I haven't come on
Celebrity.
to critique the book and to discuss the book. Anybody who knows me knows I'm not into sycophancy, by the way, just to be crystal clear on that one.
We're past 40 minutes already. So, Andrew, I'm going to ask you one last question. And I'm going to be honest. I got hooked to the book and regretted that it was over. And it ended so abruptly as well. Do you change your mind over time reading it, or did you have to wait for another book to get convinced of Chris' new Pulp Fiction adventures? Because yes, Julia and Wasim, unlike me, Andrew did get another book to read.
So to answer your first question, yes, I thoroughly enjoyed the book. And as I had said earlier, particularly the learning reinforcement as you went on, that was subtle. And I enjoyed the book overall. However, Chris then gave me an early preview to have a look at. And Chris, I'm a little bit concerned because you haven't said that that's your second book, because it's called the Day We Couldn't Pay.
That's your third. That's his third book, not his second.
And I was right in the middle of doing something, and I opened the file just to make sure that it wasn't corrupted when I downloaded it. And I suddenly lost an hour of my time and got nearly 40% into the book because I was absolutely gripped from the first. This one genuinely, and maybe it's because it resonated a bit too closely to experiences that I have had, lived experiences, but it was like being in the middle of that. There was that TV series 24 Hours that came out, and it was like being in the middle of that. Literally, I just went, no, I've got to shut this down because I've got deadlines to hit on the work side and I can't finish the book. After this, I'm actually going to pick up that and finish reading it because I want to see how it goes on. But that one to me, Chris, that was, if your next one is like that or the previous one is like that, you've got me hooked on a brand new genre of book, really, because even with that one, there's loads of information crammed into it that is genuinely valid within the financial services industry. But it's a page-turning story that will resonate to a lot of people who have been in this for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit, I wouldn't even say sci-fi-ish in terms of the construct. The construct is very, very real and could happen today, right now. This is fiction, but it's not far fiction. And that one, yeah. Out of the two, the second one is my firm favorite, and I'm not even halfway through yet.
And the funny thing is that actually happened to me a week last Friday because Wordline went down, and I was in Marks and Spencer's with a basket full of goods. And as I got to the tills, the self-service checkout, all the assistants were running around saying, cash only, no cards, cash only, because the card system had gone down. And everyone's looking at each other saying, who the hell has cash? The day we couldn't pay. Sorry,
but that's food for another podcast when all of us gets a free copy to read that one as well. As I shared in a comment on LinkedIn as well.
If I can, Rick, I just wanted to say it was written like a really good screenplay. It reminded me of 24, where, you know, like the days are counting down and what's happening each day. So it was really kind of weaved quite well. But I think Clint, in some ways, is a genius in that he's definitely like a pathological liar. And it's this whole narrative of the House of Cards, you know, where you can stack them up really quick and they can fall down really down. And it got me thinking about trust in financial services. I was on a panel a few months ago about it. And that's what financial services is. Like when you get a run on a bank, the trust is gone and people just want their money out. And if they nothing do it, the company disappears. And we see it every year in some form. So I found that narrative quite interesting.
Now I'm going to close it. With the last appraisal, there is a Ponzi scheme. I shared it on social media in a comment as well. I don't know the right wording in English, but I think like the cover is pretty screamy. Don't make the evaluation based on the cover. Make the evaluation based on this podcast. If you haven't made your list of books for summer yet, you can choose whether you add it either on the leisure part or the business part. But Dario Ponzi Scheme should definitely be on your list. With that, I'd like to thank the guests, Julia, Wasim, and Andrew, for being here, for commenting, and Chris for writing the book. Chris, good luck with your Pulp Fiction series, and I hope we can meet again very soon.